Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Jessica Ward King, the StigmaCrusher here. This week is Mental Health Week in Canada, and the theme of Mental Health Week this year is my story. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about my story and why it's so important to me that I tell it. So I got started, I literally just this week got one of those, how memories will pop up and it'll be like, oh, this is the picture or the graphic that you posted to this platform 10 years ago. And it reminded me that it's only been 10 years since I started telling my story of mental health and mental illness publicly. Now, I've been living with mental illness since I was about 15, so that's around 25 years. And I only started telling my story 10 years ago. And the reason, it had to be a big reason to get me to come out of my closet, so to say. And of course, here I mean my mental health closet. So what was going on is that I was teaching at a college. And, and as anyone knows, college students have rough time with mental health. They're transitioning from a part of their life where they're, young and dependent upon their parents to that part of life where they're supposed to be more self-reliant and independent. And at the same time, they're, having to navigate a new school system and getting the grades, as well as living life on their own and potentially working to finance their education. So there's really a lot that causes the mental health of students to be particularly fragile. And notwithstanding as well the fact that they are at the age when many, if not most, of mental illnesses will first appear. And so it's kind of during adolescence and young adulthood that most of the major mental illnesses like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, but as well as anxiety disorders, mood disorders like depression, will quite often appear for the first time during late adolescence and early adulthood. And so we know that it's rough in terms of mental health for students. And what happened at the college was that one of the students that I had died by suicide. And that's terrible enough in and of itself. But it's what happened next that launched me into talking about my mental health. And it was that the college said that this student died, period. No one should talk of suicide out of respect for the student's family. And so what happened was that all those students, the surviving students, got the message that at that institution, suicide wasn't a respectable way to die. That mental health, by kind of adding to that mental health issues were not a respectable issue. And that out of respect for their own families and for the family of this student of theirs that died, they really should just not be talking about mental health issues and suicide. And that because I had first really struggled with suicidal ideation and self-harm when I was at university myself. And so to hear the college take that stance and to see the distraught students that came to me, because I was a psychology professor and many of them, would come to me to ask me about mental health and mental illness. And they would come to me and tell me that this is exactly what they took from it. This isn't me just projecting what they might have taken from this announcement. This was actually what many of the students took from this announcement. And it destroyed me to think that another student might take their own life, might not reach out for help because of this announcement, because they think that it's shameful to have mental illness and to have suicidal ideation because of stigma. And so I figured that if I wanted these young people to reach out and ask for help, if I wanted them to reach out and tell their stories of mental health and mental illness, that the only way I could do that with any sort of thinking thinking I was right, was that I had to also speak about my own experience with mental health and mental illness. Now, I organized a symposium. I invited some local guest speakers to come and speak on mental health. But I was one of the quote unquote keynote speakers. And it was the first time that my colleagues, the other professors at this college, would hear that I was struggling with my mental health. It was the first time that my students would hear that I was struggling. It was the first time that anyone outside of my care team and my immediate family would hear. I had honestly never spoken about it before because the stigma was too great. I was terrified that if anyone found out that my burgeoning career would be over, that I would never work again in this town, as they say, that no one would want to give me a job, no one would want to entrust me with important files, no one would want for me to be taking care of the education of their children because I was somehow defective. That was my shame. That was my stigma. And it was self-stigma. And so I told my story, and to my great surprise, what actually happened was that my colleagues came to me one by one to talk about either their own stories or the stories of their loved ones. And my students similarly would come to me to talk about their own experience, or that they were worried about another student or a brother or sister. And I found that in sharing my story, there was community being built. And it was, I didn't dare to believe that it could possibly be what would always happen. I thought maybe I'd just been lucky. And so when I moved on from that job into a different field, and I was now working in an office setting, and it wasn't, in my mind, people weren't going to be as understanding as they were maybe at the college. Again, I went into hiding, and I convinced myself that no one would ever trust me. They wouldn't, give me the promotion. They wouldn't give me the important files because you never know when that one will crack. She's got mental illness, And so I went back into hiding, and the thing that brought me out this time was that I got markedly worse again. My mental health declined very sharply. And I was once again, for the first time since I was a student, really having suicidal ideation. And I ended up going into a clinical trial where I got my deep brain stimulator. If you've been around for a while, you'll know that I have a little machine. There's a battery underneath my chest wall here that connects to some wires that go up and into my head about here and give me a constant little zzz, zzz, zzz of electricity. And it stimulates a part of my brain that is implicated in mood. And it worked. It really worked. And I found myself well for the first time in a while. And that spurred me to tell my story. But this time it was because I thought I was fixed. And I told my story kind of from a standing back kind of place, like well, this is what happened to me in the past, but here I am now fixed. And I found that there was still a lot of receptivity to my story, but I wasn't as involved in creating that sense of community, that sense of contact between myself and my audience. I mean, I was an engaging speaker, but that was about it. Until I should have known better. Bipolar disorder doesn't get fixed, not even by brain implants. And so I inevitably hit another mood episode, another depression again. And these talks that I started doing at work, so I work for the government of Canada. There's this wonderful institution called the Federal Speakers Bureau on Mental Health, now renamed the Federal Speakers Forum on Lived Experience. But the name is not the important part. The fact that it exists is, and there's a large group of us now. It's been about 7 years since the Federal Speakers Bureau started. There's a large group of us now that we volunteer, so we do it for free, and we go into different teams, different departments all across the whole federal government and talk about our lived experience of mental illness. And so I've been doing this for about 7 years now. I have talked to over 10,000 different workers in the federal government. And ever since I started talking, not as though I was fixed, but as though I was really in it, like mental health and mental illness was my life, I have really found that sense of community, that sense of contact. And that's what my story is to me. And a story, it's a way of, it's not just telling the facts, it's a whole way of framing something, right? It's putting the facts into context. It's putting the emotions with the relevant facts and contexts. It's really, it's interpreting what has happened. And so each and every time I do my talk, it's different. And each and every time it's almost like therapy. I'll realize something, or an audience member will raise a question, and I'll think, wow, that's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought of it that way. Each and every time I do a talk, something new comes of it for me. And of course, I continue to live through with my mental illness. And so each and every time I do a talk, I may have something completely different to bring to the table. And so, having a major depressive episode all through COVID and trying ketamine, that was new, bringing that to the table. All of the rapidly cycling bipolar disorder that I've been having the last 6 months or so, that's new. And talk about that now and bring that to the table. And it's always adding to the story and reinterpreting who I am as a person living with mental illness. And so that's what my story is to me. It's those two things. It's that point of connection between people, and it's also that reinterpreting and reimagining of the story, which is really helpful to me because with my memory deficit due to the electroconvulsive therapy that I've had in my life, having these, telling and retelling my story helps to cement it in my memory. So what am I trying to say with all of this? I guess we all have mental health, right? If you're here, you know the drill. We all have mental health. 1 in 4 of us have mental illness, but 4 in 4 of us love someone with mental illness. You have a story about mental health, and you have a story about mental illness. And telling those stories, even just in casual conversation among friends, it can be that point of connection. It can be that point of reinterpreting and helping to interpret. And you just never know when you are going to have that impact. And I've been told many times having done large talks in front of thousands of people that, you really made an impact in my life. Great. I've been told when just speaking one-on-one with someone, after a talk, someone in the audience, or even just a person in my life, that, wow, and I've actually said to other people, wow, you've really made a difference for me today. And that's what our stories can do. They can help to open it up. They can help to blow open that stigma. They can help to make that connection. They can help to reinterpret the experiences that we've had. And I can't think of anything that has been more worthwhile. Well, okay, one thing, my family. But apart from them, nothing more worthwhile in my life than telling my story about mental illness and mental health, and sharing those experiences and those interpretations with others. So I highly recommend that you do that in your daily life. And hey, if you can do it on a larger scale and you feel comfortable doing that, highly recommend that too. Let me know if you are. Let me know how you do. And I will see you in my next one. Happy Mental Health Week. Bye.
StigmaCrusher.